This is the second part of how to track our stock investments and prepare profit loss statement. In the first part, we learned about how to record our buy transactions and track our investments for possible gain or loss. We also learned how to record sell transactions and calculate incurred profit or loss. In this second part, I will demonstrate how to prepare profit loss or PL statement for the range of dates we are specifying. So without wasting time, let's get started. So in the first part, we created this transactions tab. In the second part, I'm going to create this PL statement based on the sell transactions. So we already created this transactions sheet where I record buy and sell transactions, and then we calculate profit and loss. To create PL statement, I'm going to fetch required columns from this transactions tab into our second tab called PL statement. So the columns that we are going to fetch from the first tab is serial number, script, ISIN number, buy date, quantity, effective buy price, sell date, effective sell price, and profit loss. Columns in this blue color we are fetching from the transactions tab, and the columns in this pink color we are computing in this sheet based on the data we are pulling. First, let us understand how to pull required data from transactions tab. So we write that formula in the A6 cell where we are using query function to pull all the records from the transactions tab matching our required condition. So you can see here in the query function, let me show you the information about this function. The first shows the data range. So I'm pulling data from transactions tab. It's starting from A3 till R. So let me show you in the transactions tab we have A3 and we go till R, which contains profit and loss. From that range we select certain columns and then we specify the conditions which should be true for our records. So let us see what columns we are selecting from the transactions tab. We select A, B, C. So let's see it one by one. We select A, B, C. Which is serial number, script, and ISIN number. Then we select E, F, and I. E is for buy date. Then we are selecting quantity and we are selecting effective buy price because we are not interested in getting this trade price per share and charges per share. Our calculation will be based on the effective buy price. So we are pulling this by effective buy price. Then we pull M, P, and Q. So let's see this M, P, Q column. So M is for sell date, P is for effective sell price, and Q is for profit loss. So from this transactions tab we are fetching all these columns that we are specified in our query function. Now for those columns we want to select all the transactions which are satisfying a particular condition. So let me show you what I have written here. I have specified from date and to date. Between this range I want to calculate profit loss. So as an example, I have taken 1st April 2021 till 31st March 2022. So within this range, whatever transactions we have performed, for that I want to create profit loss statement. We use this from date and to date in framing our where clause. So you can see here what we have written in where clause. So we select all the records where value of M column, which is our selling date, is between these two dates. We write value of M column is greater than or is equal to start date and less than or is equal to end date. However, when we use this date value in the query function, we have to convert date value into string format. So for that we convert this date into YYYY-MM-DD format using this text function, and in front of that we write this date keyword. So we have to write this date value in query function as date one space, then we enclose the date in string format in single quote. Same way we convert to date into desired format using this text function. So this B3 cell contains from date and C3 cell contains to date. So once we execute this query function, it is going to populate all the records for which we have performed cell transactions, and all the records will be populated here. So here we see all the records for which we have performed cell transactions. If you see in the transactions tab, we'll have records for which we have not performed cell transaction. But when we generate PL statement, we have to consider only those records for which cell transaction exist. Now here I am calculating the number of days in this period. We can easily calculate that by subtracting this from date to date and add 1 day. So that will give us 365 for this case, which indicates number of days in this range. So this 365 will be used to bifurcate our profit and loss, either short term or long term. So as I said earlier, this days held, short term PL and long term PL, these are computed from the data that we are retrieving. So let's calculate this days held. You can see the formula days held is G7 minus D7. G7 is our sell date and D7 is our buy date, and we add 1 into that, so that will give us total number of days that stock was held in our portfolio. And this calculation I am doing only if A7 is not null, which we learned in our first part. The next part is to bifurcate this profit and loss into short term or long term. So let's see what formula we write. So we check how many days we have held our stock, which is in J column. So for this case, this cell will be J7. So I check if J7 is less than or is equal to D3, which is 365. If that is the case, then our profit or loss will be short term. So I'm in that condition, I'm putting value of I7, which is profit and loss, into this cell. Same way I can bifurcate this profit and loss into long term. So let's see what formula we have written for that. So I check if J7, that is number of days we have held that stock, is greater than D3. So that will be long term. So in that case, I am putting value of I7, which is profit or loss, into this cell. So that will be our long term profit and loss. So this profit or loss will be either short term or long term based on how many days we are holding that stock in our portfolio. Once we do this, we summarize our short term profit loss and long term profit loss here. So let's see what formula we have written for that. So this row will show us profit, either short term or long term, and this row will show us our loss, either short term and long term. And finally we calculate effective short term profit loss, effective long term profit loss, and we also have gross profit loss for our either short term or long term. So let's see what formula we write to calculate short term profit loss. So this will be the sum of values which are present in these cells, but we have to consider only positive value for profit. So let us see the formula we have written. So we use sum if range is K7 till the last row, and the condition is value has to be greater than 0. So when we do this, it will give us the sum of all the profits. Same way I can calculate sum of our losses. So formula is similar, only condition is less than 0. In the profit, condition is greater than 0. In the loss, condition is less than 0. And we have chosen the same range because the short term profit or loss is present in this K column. Same way I can calculate long term profit loss. So the formula will be similar. The range will be starting in the L column. So let's see what formula we have written for that. The formula is sum if L7 to L, that's the last row, and the condition is value is greater than 0. So it's going to do sum of all the profit, all the positive values, which is our profit. And same way we write formula for loss, that is sum if L7 to L, where condition is value is less than 0. So in this way we can bifurcate profit and loss into short term and long term. Now we calculate effective short term profit loss, which is very simple, which will be sum of these two. So you can see that formula, it's a sum of K2 to K3. This is K2, this is K3. Same way we calculate effective long term profit loss, which is sum of L to L3. And here I do sum row wise, which will give us profit, gross profit, combination of short term profit, long term profit, and same way I calculate gross loss, combination of short term loss and long term loss. So you can see formula, it's simple, formula is very similar. Here it will be sum of K2 L2, here it will be sum of K3 L3. So you can see here. And finally we calculate sum of K4 L4, which is this short term PL and long term PL. In this way we can easily create our own profit loss statement. As an exercise, you can calculate applicable tax. For example, you can easily calculate tax for short term, which is 15%, and for long term it is 10%. So I leave it up to you. Thanks for watching.